Welcome to Eurotopia, your program about European politics. On today's program, we're going to talk about Volt, the first pan-European political party. We're going to talk to some of its founders, as well as the current leadership, to understand the challenges ahead. A movement that was created by 3 European students 5 years ago. One of those students back in 2017 was Damian Boeselager, today a member of the European Parliament elected in 2019 in Germany. He recalls those initial days.
Typical startup time, a lot of work put into trying to make this movement work. We started posting on Facebook, I think on the 29th of March in 2017. And before I had planned a bit, what the branding would be, what our identity would be, what our program would be, and also very importantly, what our goals would be, like what we want to achieve. And then we just started posting, and I think in the first week, around 100 people subscribed and said, yeah, we also want to build a European party, that's really cool, Yeah. And then from that, only 10 stayed. From this first moment of posting and like having the first people join, until 2 years later, we built, I think, 7 parties, associations to be able to run for the European elections. We wrote 270 pages of program with a lot of people in a process. And we wrote even an election program for the parliamentary elections, which was the same all across Europe, and then ran for the elections out of 7 countries. I think also today that this kind of spirit that was there in the beginning is extremely helpful to see that in the world coming up and again, which is like this idea of like, I'm going to be crazy ambitious about something positive, changing the European continent by building a European party. And then really putting a lot of effort into it and trying to make it a reality and not let yourself be stopped by potential naysayers or people who say like, no, I don't think this will ever work, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're crazy, and you just say, no, it's a good thing, I like it, why not just go for it?
Meanwhile, someone that really went for it was Reinier van Lanschot, current co-president of Volt Europe.
I remember that the first time when I heard about Volt, I thought to myself, that's such a good idea. Why have I never thought of this myself? It's so logical. But the guys that are spreading this idea are young, in their 20s. They don't have any political experience, and they also told me they had 0 money. I was like, okay, then it's going to be really hard to put this good idea into practice. And I've noticed over the course of the years that follows that often the idea is only the first %. And then the 99% that comes after is execution of that idea, and that's fully dependent on the people. It starts with being concerned about the direction that we as a society were heading in, about the rising populism and the lack of an answer to the challenges of our time, like climate change. So when I heard about the idea, I thought this is a great idea, I'm going to help out a bit. Even though I was curious on how this could ever be executed, I did think the idea is so good, and I would like to try and help out a bit myself, because I had for years thought, I see these trends and somebody should do something about it. And then these guys came and said, you are somebody too, why don't you do something? I was like, okay, fair enough, I should stop complaining, I should try and make a change or be part of the change I want to see. And at some point we got in a Dutch national newspaper, page 8, small article. My name was mentioned once in a side sentence about new political, the title of the article was New Energy for Europe. And that created an amount of responses that I had not imagined. So people in my work environment, friends of my parents, people somehow got my number or my private email address, or on social media they were like, this is amazing, how can I help? And we got like 200 people in a week saying that they wanted to help. So I was like, wow, there is actually a broader need for this. So we launched our political party in a renovated church that's now an event center called The Hope, which was good.
Appropriate name?
Yes, appropriate name. And I remember that there was a television crew of national news there. And they started interviewing me, and I was at some point just laughing so hard. This is ridiculous. What happened is 6 months ago, and now 6 months before I wasn't active in politics ever, and now 6 months later I'm here. I'm on national television telling about how the world should change, what we are trying to do, and what our goals are, and why, and what the vision is, etc. So, again, we got a lot of positive responses. The amount of people volunteers that we tried to coordinate grew more and more, and the cool thing about that article, New Energy for Europe, is that Laurens Dassen, who's now the head of parliament in the Netherlands, he read that article and reached out to us and said, I want to help out. And he was super engaged.
Let me start then with the first time I encountered with Volt, because indeed I was working at a bank. I was doing more on the innovation side, developing app and web. Enjoying my job, got good perspectives, and at a certain moment I came home and I got a text message from my dad, and he said to me, Lawrence, read this article, it might be interesting for you. And I opened the article and it said, we want to bring new energy into Europe, and I read about Volt. And they spoke about bringing politics to the European level, because they said only if we collaborate across borders we are able to face the challenges that we face today, like climate change, digitalization, the changing world, China, to name a few. And I read the article and I got so inspired that I texted my dad right away back. I put myself up for a member. Let's go for the European elections. Well, I started helping with fundraising, with communication a bit, and a little bit of this. I mean, Volt in the Netherlands was then so small that actually there was almost nothing. And it started with a few hours, and a few hours became evenings and weekends and more. And then in June 2018 we founded Volt in the Netherlands, and I was one of the founding board members.
We cannot do this without having full-timers. Laurens and I came to the conclusion the only way we get money to hire full-timers is if we have full-timers first. So let's do it. Quit our jobs and volunteer for it full-time.
After the founding, we got around 70 members, and together with Reinier, the co-president of Volt Europa right now, we were sitting on a Sunday and we said to each other, okay, if we want Volt to succeed in the Netherlands, we have to have people that are running it full-time. But we don't have any money. So if you don't have any money, you're not able to pay anyone. And then during that discussion, we came to the moment that we said to each other, maybe we should quit our jobs and do it ourselves. And I remember that, because I looked it up afterwards, is that the day after I texted my boss and I said, okay, I would like to have a discussion. So the week after I had a discussion with him, and I said I want to quit my job because I want to I want to work full-time for Volt, because I strongly believe in it. And in that week, a lot of things happened, of course. I spoke to my girlfriend, who completely supported me. She said to me, Lawrence, I've never seen you so enthusiastic, so passionate about a subject, that I think you should go for it.
Volt has experienced different levels of success in Europe, but in the Netherlands, that success has been the most significant, with the election of 3 members of parliament. But it wasn't always easy.
A lot of people in the Netherlands now see that we are in the parliament, and they think we came out of nowhere. But for me, we were building already for 3 years, and especially in the beginning, we sometimes traveled to a city, Nijmegen for example, and we organized the first event, and around 3 or 4 people joined. And I was really happy, because I thought, okay, 3-4 people who heard about Volt and they are interested enough to join for this evening, and they might even be able to help and willing to help. And during that event also 6 of my friends came, because I studied in Nijmegen, and they all entered the room and they were like, what's this? We expected way more people. And I spoke to one of them afterwards, and he explained to me, but Lawrence, I'm so happy that I saw this, because now I've seen how hard you need to work in order to build Volt. The campaign really lifted off in the beginning of January, because we needed to collect signatures throughout the Netherlands. And all the local city teams, they were out there on the streets, making sure that people went to the municipality office to put down the signatures. And we were spreading it on social media that we were progressing, and we managed to collect in all the different regions the required signatures. And at the same time, there were over 1 million flyers going through all the letterboxes. And that was also the first moment that a journalist contacted us and said, okay, a European party that wants to run in the national elections, why is that? And that's when we were able to pull our story forwards. And the story is quite simple, to be honest, because we face very big challenges, climate change, and it's not something that's new. It's been there for a long time and we haven't been able to handle it at the moment. And we say, okay, we need to pull this off on a European level. We need to strongly work more closely. Same for digitalization, same for defense. And that was the basis of our story, that we said, okay, we need to get out of the national perspective and look to it from a European perspective. And also, this needs to be done from the national parliaments, because the national parliaments still form the European Union. They still decide a lot. So we had an article, and then we did a podcast, and then more people joined, and we were visible on the streets. And it was so amazing to see in 6 weeks, we went from completely unknown to 12,000 members, 3 seats in the parliament. We were on all the television shows. And it was absolutely amazing to see all the energy. And also that people said to us, it's so logical what you guys want to achieve. And one of the important things also within this is, if you want to solve those challenges, then we need to make the European Union more effective. And we can only do that by taking down the veto rights of the national countries.
I think that the times we live in and the challenges we face that are at least international but often also global, they are actually making the necessity and the relevance of Volt larger and larger. It's like we're surfing a wave and the wave is growing while we are surfing it.
So, how can one run a movement with different nationalities, with different ambitions, backgrounds and challenges?
I think for an organization like Volt, there's a lot of different challenges. First and primarily, we have huge ambitions and way too little resources. So anytime you reach a new point, you're like, bam, now we can do this, and then when we're there, now we can do that. So you're always battling how to treat the scarce resources you have, while having ambitions that are visionary and big. Secondly, we are a political movement, but in order to create the change that we want to see, we also need to participate in the political party spectrum of each individual country with its own legal rules, and that complicates the governing model of Volt Europe a lot. So combine that with the fact that you need certain structures and decision making, while in a movement you also want that within those structures people have a lot of freedom. And I always notice the tension between pushing for what, with a small group of leaders, this is what we should do, and trying to involve everybody in the process of making such a decision. And at first I saw that tension as something bad, like it's rubbing against each other.
You wanted consensus.
Yes, but then I met a guy who has a lot of experience in building movements and in political innovation, and he told me that tension shows that you're doing the right thing. Because if that tension is gone, it either means that you have a movement where everybody just goes in any direction and basically you can't achieve your goals because everybody just does what they want. Or if you are with a small group of leaders pushing ahead and only pushing through what you want, then you become, you lose your movement style and just become like his old school traditional political parties. So embrace that tension. I think that was a challenge as well.
When you say like you're being super ambitious about, I'm going to enter the German parliament in this example, that's good, you should be. You should not shy away from that chance. But where were we when we decided this? We had no regional association. You need 16 regional associations. We had basically, no candidates, no program, and absolutely no funds to be able to do that in Germany. But we still said, yeah, we're going to run for the German elections. And on the street when I was campaigning, I met, a lot of people said like, you know what, I really like Volt. I think you're really, really cool. I'm not going to vote for you this time because I think, it's an important vote and I'm not sure you will make the 5%. And maybe I care about liberal issues, I vote liberal or green or, social democrat just to, but continue with what you're doing. And I think that's exactly the right thing. We put an ambitious goal out. We, I think, achieved to be able to run a really successful campaign from our perspective, really having great candidates, a great program, a great campaign. And now it's just about, you know, somehow like shaking off the result, which was a bit, I mean, not what we hoped for, and say like, look, amazing, look at what we achieved in terms of visibility, in terms of standing, in terms of credibility, in terms of, yeah, everything.
We have now with us Francesca Romana D'Antuono, the co-president of Volt Europa. Welcome to the show, Francesca. Thank you for joining us today. Allow me to start this interview by asking something personal. How did you become involved in Volt? What brought you into politics? And what motivates you to be today's co-president of Volt?
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here with you today. So thank you for the question. It's a story that I don't even know when it starts, because I've always been interested in politics. But to be honest, I was just, following the debates and reading and discussing with my friends, but I never thought of actually becoming active in politics. So what happens is that, at like around 2017, a series of events starts happening, like Trump gets elected, Bolsonaro gets elected, and then also in Europe, we have Brexit, we have questionable leaders around the Union. And yeah, the situation doesn't look very good, but also in Italy, which is the country where I'm from, we elected in 2018 a government that was made by a populist party and a far-right party, whose agenda was mainly to just, kick migrants away and nothing more than that. But it was, the speech were full of hate and the debate was really escalating. So I thought, that like maybe I should do something about it. And I honestly, firstly, turned to the so-called progressive parties in my country to see if I could activate with them. And I saw that honestly, they weren't doing much. They were, just going with the flow, and I really needed to take some action. So very randomly, I found Volt on the internet, actually on social media. I think I got targeted on Facebook, being myself a millennial with an Erasmus background. I saw it, I read about it, and then I joined my city group. I was living in Florence at the time, and immediately after, I got contacted by somebody who explained me a bit what Volt was about, and immediately I was able to take some action and to become active, as in concretely contributing to what the party was doing. And this for me was very empowering, because again, I was looking for an active way of making a difference. And so since then, I think I never stopped.
Perfect. So you're Italian, but you live in Germany. Obviously, Volt being a pan-European movement which combines different nationalities. Tell us a little bit how you manage the differences between the different countries. You also have people with different backgrounds. They might be more left-wing, more right-wing, more progressive. How do you manage the different views within Volt?
Yeah, thanks. That's a very interesting question. And this is literally what I do every day. So, Volt is the first and only pan-European party, but this doesn't mean that there are not other organizations around that strive to have more collaboration at an international level. Like one is DM25, for example, or also some other. The difference in Volt is that what you described, combining different visions, for us is something that happens before a proposal even exists. So what happens at the moment, also in the European Union, and of course in all these organizations, is that each member state creates their position according to their national needs, and then they come together and discuss, one position against the other and try to find a compromise. What we do is co-creation. So at the very, very beginning, we have an issue, a problem, a challenge that we decide to collaborate on from scratch. So you never have people like from Portugal only working on something. You always have people of different nationality bringing in different perspective, so that the solution that we come up with is not a compromise, but it's really something that has been co-created together. In terms of having different souls, I think this is really the beauty of Volt. Volt is not a party that, follows one specific ideology, but really our politics is made every day with different views from different people able to influence each other and to debate with each other. And the debate is seen as something healthy that could bring new ideas on the table. So we're not married to anything specific, but really try to be progressive in the real sense of the word, which means, again, challenging continuously your view, understanding how science, technology can help developing a better world. Of course, this happens in a value frame that is the vision of a more united Euro to tackle inequalities, to transition to a green economy. So it's not like, in the void, there's of course a shared vision, but then how to get there, it's really part of our soul. So we debate a lot and we co-create a lot.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about the different levels of success that Volt experienced so far. Relatively new movement 5 years after Brexit. We saw in the introduction piece that, for instance, you have a member of European Parliament elected from Germany. You experienced some level of success in the Netherlands. But for instance, in other countries, such as Italy and France, you have less representation. How do you explain these differences, and what are the goals in terms of presence around Europe?
Thank you very much. This is something I'm deeply passionate about, because I think this is one of the real flaws of the European Union as it is now. So you correctly mentioned, we elected Damian Boeselager in the European Parliament some years ago. Then in the Netherlands and in Bulgaria, we managed to elect in the national parliament. And then now that it's our 5th anniversary, we actually have arrived at the goal of having 100 elected officials around Europe. But you're right, we have different level of successes, and this depends on the fact that although the European Union is a union, we really live in different types of democracy. I actually published very recently an article about that, about how the member states live in different democracies with different rules. So I'll give you some examples, some concrete examples. To run for election in France, we have estimated that just to be able to run, the investment is around 1 million euro. This means for small parties that you have no chance. On the contrary, or on different matter, in Italy, which is again the country I'm from, you cannot be elected unless you go beyond a certain threshold. This threshold doesn't exist in other countries. For example, it doesn't exist in the Netherlands, or for the European election, it didn't exist for Germany. Also, if you look at the European election, the experiment, let's say, of running with the same program, the same brand, and the same values around Europe, it was really enlightening, because although the teams were making the same efforts, the different democratic rules inside their countries meant that there were very, very different results. So we try to live involved as if we were living in the same democracy. But in the outside world, this is really not true. The European Union at the moment is just a patchwork of different rules. So the member states are not really comparable, and therefore their results should not be comparable. This is true, by the way, also in a lot of different areas. You usually have the rich north and the poor south, right? But when you look at the rules, for example, of taxation or wealth redistribution, you see that the rules are very uneven. And so being rich or being poor depends on how the different member states are organized, but they're really not comparable. It's like compare apples and pears, you know what I mean?
So that's very interesting. Tell us about, how do you answer those critics out there that say that Volt takes away national sovereignty from their countries, being a federalist movement? How do you answer those critics that say that they're going to lose national powers to command their own destiny?
Yeah, that's a comment we get a lot, and I think somehow is natural, like people want to feel that they still belong. But this is not at all neither the intention of Volt. This is not what Volt wants to do, and honestly, this is not what has happened in the past. So if you look, I don't know, at Germany. Germany is made of a lot of different states. Of course, they now share a language, and they feel they share history. But when Germany was made, let's say, this was not the case, and it's the same with Italy. Italy was a lot of different states that spoke similar but different languages, and then they were able to come together. When you think of the making of a nation, you don't feel like you lose your identity, I don't know, as a person from, again, as me, I'm from south of Italy. I don't lose my identity as someone from the south by being Italian. And it's the same for the European Union. You should not, it's not recommended actually that you lose your national identity. Actually, it's the other way around. What we believe is that with the diversity that we have inside the European Union, by coming together, and again, as I said before, by collaborating and co-creating solution, this would be actually an element of enrichment for everybody. So it's an understandable fear, but honestly, it's really not there. This has not happened in the past and would not happen with the European Union.
We need to talk about the crisis in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. How such a crisis brought to light your action as movement, the need for a European answer and reaction, and how has it's only been 30 days, but how has it affected the way that Volvo understands its role in Europe?
Sad to say that actually what happens in Ukraine confirms a bit the need of a stronger and more democratic and more capable to act European Union. So as you might remember, in the first days of the crisis, the leaders of the different member states or the leaders of the NATO, so also the US, were talking sanctions. So what can we do to, from one hand, like not go to full war, because this will not benefit nobody, but also, to take an action against the criminal actions that are happening in Ukraine. And what happened is that, for example, in the first days, both Germany and Italy, as we said before, were refusing to put some of the sanctions because of their highly dependence in terms of energy from Russia. Again, this crisis only highlights the fact that if we were to be a real union, there could be even more extensive mechanism of mutual support, where member states would not need to feel threatened because the union per se could come in support of everybody. This has happened, for example, when you think about it, also with the COVID crisis, like the recovery plans, the money of the recovery plans were aiming exactly at this, a mutual system of support. And this is true for the sanctions when it comes to Ukraine, the need of a stronger and more capable to stand alone European Union. But it is also true when you look at actual instruments that we have to act. So as you know, we don't have, for example, a joint army. And this means that in case of escalation, which nobody really wants, it will be much more difficult to coordinate military action, and therefore we will be less effective. So in terms, again, of politics, honestly, this crisis just confirms what is needed. Also, if you look at what is happening with refugees, there is now, luckily, a lot of support for Ukrainian refugees coming to Europe, but the distribution of them is super unequal. The rules according to which they are inside the union are, yes, decided together, but this is not true for all the other refugees. So it's really now, again, a patchwork, and it's not effective, it's not efficient, and it really doesn't work. As from us, since the crisis started, we also have some Ukrainian members which really wanted to contribute to this, but this was true for honestly all the members. So what we did was actually put in place a platform for sharing ideas, and this has resulted in a lot of things. So from one hand, of course, it has resulted in concrete actions on the ground, so support to the local NGOs, empowerment of the citizen that want to act to counteract this crisis or to support the civil society. From another hand, raising awareness, for example, we have been, I myself have been in events online where different people from around Europe and also from Ukraine would come together and debate and try to find shared solutions. So there has been a lot of action in that sense.
Perfect. Allow me to finish our conversation by talking a topic that I know that it's dear to you, which is the role of women in politics. You have gathered a few of the women involved in outside event, I believe in Budapest. Tell us a little bit about how do you perceive the role of women and how important is for you the role of women in politics?
Yes, you're right. This is a topic that is very dear to my heart. And to be honest, although I've always been somebody who you would call a feminist, but the specific topics of the importance of having female representation in politics really grow on me. So when I joined Volt, when I joined politics, I didn't thought of doing that as a woman. You know, I just thought I want to act, and I do. But then when you start engaging, you notice the lack of female president, which is frankly quite shocking. Like half of the population is simply not represented. It's simply not there. And we are dealing with European politics where actually the situation is pretty good. In the European Parliament, you have 40%, almost 40% of the MPs that are women. You have the president, the current president of the European Parliament that is a woman. Commission, European Central Bank, they're all represented by women. But this is the best you get. If you go down like a national, regional, local level, the representation of women is really poor. It's frankly terrible. There are like very few big cities around Europe where women are mayor, for example. And again, this is European politics where the situation is the best. If you look outside Europe, it's a complete disaster, honestly. What does this mean? Well, it means a series of things. From one hand, we are missing out on our women's potential. There could be solutions, ideas, brains, a lot of things that women can put on the table to contribute on the society. So imagine you have two arms and you decide only to use one. That's just crazy. Nobody would do that. And this is exactly what we're doing. So that's why we gather together with the Women of Volt. There were 40 people from 10 member states in Europe, and we try to start from us. So what can we do to improve our life inside the party? What can we do to attract more women? But also what can we do externally to make our women more visible and our voice more heard? So hopefully you will hear more about that.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, wish you all the success, and thank you very much for your time. So that was our program today, Eurotopia, your program about politics in Europe. Tune in on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Eurotopia, your program on European politics.